The dive begins with two sisters, Drew and May, driving to a breathtaking view of the endless ocean. During their car ride, the two sisters engage in awkward small talk, with Drew showing more interest in getting to know her elder sister, May. On the other hand, May appears quiet and uninterested, even when Drew encourages her to sing along to a song, purely for nostalgic reasons. Simultaneously, it becomes apparent that Drew has been staying with their mother, and some past incidents have strained May's relationship with the family, leading to a sense of distance. The film establishes the sisters as deep-sea divers, planning to dive in a remote location known among divers. As they arrive at a rocky mountainside, the sisters analyze the area for a brief moment. They take their diving equipment and descend the steep terrain that takes to the diving spot. Finding a suitable spot, May secures two backup cylinders along with their backpack, which contains items like car keys and mobile phones. While May assembles the diving equipment featuring the latest technology, Drew again tries to initiate a conversation with her sister. However, she only receives concise responses from May, based on the interaction. After getting geared up, the sisters finally plunge into the cold water. However, just before entering the water, May tells Drew that she is very lucky, because she can feel excited about the activity. Descending slowly into the water, May follows Drew as they head toward the deep caves they had chosen to explore. Drew is excited to be underwater with her sister again, and is determined to make the most of this experience. Going from 50 feet to even greater depths, the sisters navigate through the narrow cave pathway. Upon reaching a point 30 feet further inside the cave, they discover a comfortable spot, and decide to ascend to a position 20 feet inside the cave. Here, the water level allows them to breathe without using oxygen masks. At this moment, Drew takes the opportunity to ask May about her feelings regarding the dive, and how she's holding up, prompting us to wonder about the history between the sisters. However, May avoids this confrontational exchange, and instead dives back into the water, swimming out of the cave into an open space, leaving Drew to follow her anxiously. As May stops to respond to Drew's calls, a noticeable silence surrounds the movie, causing the audience to anticipate a forthcoming threat. The sisters quickly realize that a possible landslide has caused mountain rocks to fall deep into the ocean. Due to their distance, May unfortunately becomes trapped under some of these boulders, leaving Drew in shock. With May's whereabouts unknown, Drew switches on her torch. However, the mixture of debris and ocean sand in the water creates near-zero visibility, making her unable to see anything. Unable to communicate with her sister through their comms, Drew decides to descend to a greater depth. She secures herself to a rock, using it as an anchor. Navigating through the narrow passages between the rocks, she follows a trail and eventually gets in touch with May. However, the communication is not very clear, making it difficult for Drew to hear what she's saying. Drew asks her to use the flashlight and signal her location, and she does so. Drew eventually reaches May, but panics after seeing her sister stuck under a big rock. At first, Drew tries to lift the rock but fails. She then tries to pull her out, but the rock is not allowing her to move even an inch. May then devises a plan, and suggests that Drew must return to the surface to retrieve extra oxygen cylinders, and a jack from the car, allowing them to lift the heavy rock. This plan, however, comes with a strict time limit of 20 minutes, since they are running out of oxygen in current oxygen cylinders. Initially reluctant and confused, Drew gradually realizes the urgency of the situation. It dawns on her that she needs to approach this situation calmly and efficiently to save her sister, who is running low on oxygen. Upon surfacing, Drew discovers that the two spare cylinders and the bag are trapped beneath the collapsed rocks, making them inaccessible. She sets the timer on 16 minutes, since she has already spent 4 minutes in the effort. With no alternative, Drew makes her way up the cliff and heads towards the parked car. Recalling the keys inside the bag, she breaks the car window using a rock. However, her attempt to open the trunk is met with frustration, as she finds it jammed. Not willing to give up, she uses her small knife to slit open the back seat, hoping to access the trunk. Despite her efforts, she fails to reach the back trunk. With time ticking away, Drew resorts to a map, and realizes there is a possible house nearby. She retrieves the two spare cylinders from the car, slowly descends the cliff, and checks the oxygen level in her cylinder. In the meantime, May is calmly waiting underwater, whose oxygen level is almost reaching zero. She has been grappling with her inner demons underwater, a struggle aggravated by the effects of nitrogen narcosis. Just before re-entering the water, Drew spots a boat nearby and calls for help, but they are unable to notice her. Realizing that her 20-minute window is rapidly closing, she grabs one of the cylinders and plunges back into the water, while still trying to scream. However, in the effort of calling for help, the cylinder slips from her grasp and sinks. May's oxygen cylinder reaches zero, and she is now relying on her own lung capacity. Luckily, Drew returns just in the last second of her breath, and gives her some oxygen from her own cylinder. Drew explains that she needs to retrieve the fallen cylinder, and will leave her sister with her own air supply. Drew plans to free dive to retrieve the cylinder, emphasizing the situation's urgency. During this ordeal, she becomes aware of the fact that Drew's oxygen cylinder pipe has been leaking. Once Drew retrieves the fallen cylinder, she quickly returns to May, and the sisters switch their oxygen supply. At this point, Drew informs May about the spare tanks and the nearby house. She also tells her about the boat, and her intention to surface and seek help. In response, May warns Drew about the importance of decompressing properly, and cautions her about the leaking issue of the oxygen pipe. Despite understanding the nature of the situation and the potential consequences, Drew disregards May's warnings, and swims to the surface without decompressing. Unfortunately, she discovers that the boat has left, leaving her hopeless once more. Additionally, her body reacts to high nitrogen level, resulting in bleeding from her nose. She heads towards their car once more, and makes one last attempt to open the trunk, but fails. Drew finally decides to head towards the location she had spotted on the map, holding on to the hope that she might find help. She keeps running, and running, and running, until she reaches the building. It turns out to be a church, and no one around. She breaks inside through a window, trying to find any tool that might help her with the car. Amid her search, she finds a hammer, and a red marker, which she uses to leave behind an SOS message on the map, hoping it might catch someone's attention. She then runs back to the car with that hammer, trying to break the trunk open. Unfortunately, it still doesn't work, leaving her completely enraged about the roadblocks. As a last resort, she decides to roll the car down the hill, in an attempt to break the trunk open. However, this plan hits another roadblock, when she realizes there is no jack inside the vehicle, but an air pressure foaming spray that fixes punctures. She stays there for a moment, and sobs in despair. Spotting a broken signboard nearby, Drew takes the wooden pole, hoping it might help overturn the boulder. Drew then uses the puncture spray to mend her oxygen pipe, before returning to May. Plagued by traumatic memories from her past, May finds herself in a trance-like state due to elevated nitrogen levels in her body. Drew tries to snap her out of her hallucinations, and uses the wooden pole to lift the boulder, using May's waning strength to help her. However, the pole eventually snaps, leaving them hopeless once more. At the same time, Drew realizes that the cylinder she had fixed on the surface has also gotten jammed due to the foam she applied. Tired and running out of oxygen, the two women are completely out of ideas, and May starts to lose hope, requesting Drew to go back up. In a moment of ingenuity, Drew devises another plan, and suggests using her inflatable BCD jacket beneath the rock to use it as an airlift. Nevertheless, the pressure causes the safety valve of the jacket to release air. At this moment, the sisters are left with complete despair, and May expresses her love for Drew, as she is willing to accept her death. However, Drew isn't ready to give up, and decides to surface again. She now faces extreme reaction of her high nitrogen level, nearly leaving her unconscious on the surface. Meanwhile, at this point in the film, we uncover the seed of May's trauma. Her childhood memories reveal that her father subjected her to extreme underwater breathing exercises, pushing her beyond her limits. It becomes clear that her father treated her harshly, insisting that she learn deep-sea diving, regardless of her struggles and difficulties with the practice. May somehow starts to believe that Drew won't return with help, but she is amazed to see her once more. She returned with the air-foaming spray this time, and plans to fill the jacket's valve with the foam, allowing it to generate enough lift to dislodge the boulder. They use their last remaining strength, and May is finally set free. Since Drew free dived to the surface and back, and used all her energy to free her sister from the boulder, she had completely ignored her rising nitrogen level, leading her to collapse underwater. May reacts swiftly, taking Drew to the breathing chamber within the cave they initially dived into. However, the chamber is tiny, and the air inside has turned toxic. May decides to go back to the spot and bring the jammed cylinder, which they were unable to use earlier. Drew warns her that it's not possible, but May is determined to help her sister, and starts freediving back to that spot. As May is retrieving the cylinder, Drew ultimately loses her consciousness, and passes out underwater without any breathing mask. May returns with the filled cylinder, positioning it strategically between two rocks and releasing its valve, allowing the cylinder's oxygen to fill the chamber with fresh oxygen to help Drew breathe. Upon discovering Drew unconscious and not breathing, May performs CPR and screams for her sister to wake up, successfully reviving her. They spend some time in that spot, because immediately freediving to the surface at this moment will possibly kill them. May then carries Drew on her back, and the two sisters somehow freedive back to the surface. The ending of the dive shows Drew and May sitting on the diving spot, tightly hugging one another, finally overcoming their near-death experience.